Hey, Bob Casey.
John Fetterman.
Hey, everybody.
So after we pass the Inflation Reduction Act, which will reduce inflation.
Now, I'm not proposing that we're going to be able to bring these prices down. That's impossible.
This is legislation that will do a number of things, all of which are helpful to American families and the American economy. First of all, it will lower the cost of prescription drugs for seniors. It will, in fact, lower the cost of energy, that the prices people pay for energy.
Now, I'm not proposing that we're going to be able to bring these prices down. That's impossible.
It's going to lower energy costs for American families.
That was Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania saying that the Inflation Reduction Act will reduce inflation, and then saying that it would be impossible for the Inflation Reduction Act to do the very thing they claimed it would do. Bob Casey also refuses to answer questions about people from Palestine coming to the U.S. as so-called refugees.
Do you support Biden's plan to resettle Gazan refugees in the United States? Senator Casey, do you support Biden's plan to resettle Gazan refugees in the United States? Do you think Biden should send Gazan refugees to Pennsylvania? Senator Casey, can I get a comment on that? Do you think that we should resettle Gazans in Pennsylvania, Senator Casey? Why are you avoiding the comment on the question? It's a yes or no. Why do you not want to comment on the question, Senator Casey? Senator Casey, should we resettle Gazans in Pennsylvania? Why are you walking away from that question?
For those of you who see the name of a bill and think it actually applies to what the bill is intended to do, the Inflation Reduction Act was a bill that they named the Inflation Reduction Act because inflation at the time was going crazy, and they knew that if they named something implying that it was intended to lower inflation, then people would be more likely to not be up in arms about it and then claim a win for reducing inflation. As you know, inflation is still too high, and the IRA has had absolutely nothing to do with inflation coming down to the levels it has. For reference, as about a month ago, this is how bad it's been.
This chart shows how much energy prices have increased since Joe Biden has become president, since he's taken office. It shows what had happened 4 years ago between 2017 and 2020, March of 2020, under President Trump. Gasoline prices down, natural gas prices down, home heating oil prices down, electricity prices up only 3%, total energy cost unchanged. January 17, March 2020, under President Trump. In every case, prices are not only worse under Biden, they are significantly worse. Gasoline up 48%, natural gas up 27%, home heating oil up 44%, electricity up 29%, total energy costs up 39% since Joe Biden has come into office. This is a record failure.
So what they did was they took the framework of the Green New Deal, then they moderated it to some degree, then repackaged it as a so-called Inflation Reducing Act, despite the fact that it was basically a climate bill the entire time. Once the bill was signed into law and fully implemented, we saw Joe Biden say that it should have probably been named something else. We've seen John Kerry admit that it was a climate bill. So on that note, here are some highlights of the administration confusion regarding the IRA.
Just holding up here, it's an enlarged version of a piece of paper I put out a couple months ago now to summarize the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act prescription drug provisions just in Pennsylvania.
We have to cut the carbon pollution that's driving the climate crisis, and that's what the Inflation Reduction Act is all about.
Where will our viewers see the results in their own lives, and how can they take advantage of it?
Yeah, it's a great question because there are huge opportunities for individuals, especially as they consider perhaps retrofitting their homes to be more energy efficient. So, for example, if you wanted to install a heat pump in your home, replace your HVAC system, perhaps it's gone out, you can get significant tax credit.
For our part, the United States is highlighting 77 announcements from 8 agencies and offices valued at nearly $6 billion. This is more than double the commitments that we highlighted last year in terms of dollar value, and thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the most significant piece of climate legislation in our history, we will be doing even more.
The Inflation Reduction Act is, at its core, about turning the climate crisis into an economic opportunity.
Madam Secretary, could you say a little bit more about how you believe the Inflation Reduction Act would impact inflation? How much do you believe that package would subtract from inflation, and over what time frame?
So I don't have numerical estimates for you, but I see that as making a very important contribution to lowering the cost of prescription drugs.
2 weeks ago, we celebrated the first anniversary of the Inflation Reduction Act, which in a sense is misnamed.
Thank you for finally admitting that.
Workers aren't just finding more jobs, they're finding better jobs, higher paid jobs, and job satisfaction.
This is the reality of the American economic situation right now. While you often hear this White House tout that earnings are up, well, not when you account for inflation. It's gobbling everything right up. Under this president, real average hourly earnings are down 2.63%.
It's a law that was geared to provide about $369 billion to be able to help companies and countries to be able to make the better decisions. But in reality, it's almost $1 trillion that's going to be spent. Why? Because there's no ceiling on it. There's a floor. The ceiling is defined by those people who are ready to use it and able to use it and who qualify for it. And so we actually could get up into $1 trillion if we were to push the curve here the way that we need to.
The Inflation Reduction Act.
That is a made-up name.